should be the leader of these movements. And then we're going to start off. I'm going to start off with you, Afeni, after the video, and then we're going to move on to Eric and then Colin for your responses as well.
Yeah, so it was this interview in particular that made me start to wonder, like, who should be, leading these movements. This discussion with Bree and Cenk, it made me wonder, like, maybe media personalities should not lead movements, So my thing is, I think it should be the grassroots, the people on the ground. But it was this interview that made me question.
Okay, so let's get started, and then we'll get into the responses.
Jimmy calls me and says, hey, do you want to do this force the vote thing? I go, hey, strategically, I think that is the right path. I'm not sure about the tactics yet, Jimmy. And so let's keep talking about it. And in fact, you can go back and find videos of him saying, oh, Cenk agreed with me in the beginning. Cenk agreed with me. Yeah, that's right. Because as I've explained here for over an hour, I not only agree with that strategy, I was executing that strategy, but not that specific tactic. But when we said, hey, I don't agree with this tactic, that's when Jimmy went rogue and started smearing everyone who didn't agree and went and made it a toxic cesspool. So Brianna, when they reached out to you and said, what's next? What happened was, after we were done with Force to Vote, a relevant issue came up, $15 minimum wage. That's where
this was after that. This was gone. This was after that. There was nothing left.
No problem. So let's say that also passed. But when I asked for help there, everybody was like, no, we're mad at you. Jimmy's our boss, and he says we're all mad at you, so we're not helping out $15. Wait a minute, I thought we were a movement. Well, you're not helping out $15 minimum wage? What is wrong with you? I don't mean you, I mean generically. And then, okay, fine, we're past that. But Brianna, everybody then went like, I'm taking my ball and going home. No, brother, we got a 2-year window.
That's not what we did. I don't know what was happening in your world.
And that's what I did. But everybody else left when their feelings were hurt.
I don't know what was going on in your world, but that is absolutely not what's happening in my world. Nobody took their ball and went home, and we all forcefully pressured and talked about, to the best of our ability, the squad's failure to push on $15 minimum wage, Pramila Jayapal whipping the votes against them doing exactly that. And we covered it ad nauseum on this show and every other show on this side of the left that I remember. And while I got to say, Cenk, you talked earlier in the podcast about reaching out and extending olive branches. I hope that that's true, and I hope I see that going forward. But you and I had our conversation on your show because I reached out to you and invited you on my show. And you declined, but said I could come on yours. And I did, and I'm glad we had that conversation. But I have not felt the ability. I have not felt olive branches reached out to me, and I have not felt the ability to reach out to other people. It was me that invited Sam Cedar in the wake of Force the Vote onto this show to have a conversation. And I have,
Brianna, if you want to get into that level of personal grievance,
it's not personal grievance. I'm really actually trying to bury the hatchet. I'm going to say that I think it's constructive. I hate, can I just be honest? I hate that there are all of these people who are in my own community that I don't talk to anymore, that I can't have this guest on my show who I see making funny, informative, smart content, but I feel like can never bury the hatchet over something that was a tactical disagreement that turned into saying some of the ugliest things. Again, I don't want to talk about the reasons I'm offended, but suffice to say that I was grievously offended by some of the very personal things that were said at the time. But I just want to say for the record right now, I would be more than happy to bury the hatchet going forward.
So first off, Afeni, when it comes to, after listening to the exchange between Brianna Joy Gray and Cenk Uygur, in your view, who should be the ones that are taking the lead in the movements, please?
Well, first of all, in order to be leading a movement, you have to actually be on the ground with people to lead a movement. So inherently, while yes, digital media and these hosts that have been doing these shows, did they introduce a lot of people to our politics, to the left, to communism, all the other stuff? Absolutely. Myself and many other folks that I'm in organization with and in community with right now watched TYT and the majority reports back in 2016 and 2017. That was our introduction to the left space. But just because we were introduced by them does not mean we were organized by them into actually being who we are. So I just think that it's really backwards to think that people that are not actually attached to these communities are going to be able to lead anything. I think, especially when you think about like a Cenk Uygur or like Anna Kasparian, like, I think to call the movement leaders is strong. And as we start to talk about what is necessary moving forward, because we are in a posture where, like, fascism is here, it's alive and well. We're living in a police state that's happening. 69 cop cities being built across the country. The cross training with the IOF happening at these cop cities. We're already in police state. We're already in hell. So we need to start organizing on the ground and being serious about it. And I think that, I don't know, like, I just think that it's very hubristic of a Cenk Uygur or Anna Kasparian, or even some people that I love who do these shows, to think that they're movement leaders. They're very much not. It's not given that. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Eric?
So what I would say is I think it's almost kind of starting with the wrong question. I feel like rather than starting with leaders, I would say we should be starting with demands. Right? If you're going to have a movement, if you're going to have a general strike, really any of these things, you can't have these. I mean, they need demands, right? Any strike needs demands. And so that's the question I always put out there. What are our demands? Are we clear about them? Do we have a clear and concise list? And, it's something that I've tried to do with the things that I've worked on. But I feel like if you start there, then you can work on inspiring people. You can talk about, once you have the demands, what are the solutions? And, so that's where I would come from on that question.
Sure. Colin, your thoughts?
As someone who's done this as a teacher by association for the last 20 years, as Afeni said, it has to be, the people have to take the lead, whatever that means. So whatever organization locally or statewide that is already doing the work, they should be the ones who should be uplifting those issues and bringing it to the forefront. That being said, I feel the independent media has a role to play in that. And I believe what independent media should do is help to elevate these issues and elevate these organizations. And from what I'm seeing, even in DC right now, one of the programs that I'm actually looking at is they are looking to build out their social media apparatus in terms of how can they articulate the issues that are important to people in a way that is quick, is easy for people to understand, but kind of gets the point across quickly. We're kind of seeing what happened. We've seen this in terms of Palestine, how so many of these content creators are able to create content around Palestine that the whole world essentially is pro-Palestine given the power of social media. And I think independent media, especially with what we're able to do, has the ability to do that. But it cannot overstep or overtake the work that the organizers are doing on the ground, because they know the people well, they know the issues well, and as Eric said, they're better able to make those demands the best. So I would always say, if you're asking who should lead it, the question is, who are you asking to lead? And I think more oftentimes, especially in these circles, they're not asking us. They're asking the people with a platform who may not be intimate with these issues, that may take our issues and water them down into something that is unrecognizable. And I think being on the ground, we have to do our best to protect that, because we want to make sure that if we're making demands, we want to make sure that every single one of those demands are being met. and not watered down into something that's unrecognizable to the point where they're giving us crumbs.
Gotcha. Sabs, I would like to get your thoughts on this as well.
I think everyone's points are really valid. I would say if we look at the pro-Palestinian, movement, that I call it a movement because it's happening internationally. Those rallies were not put on and were not led by media people. You may see media people show up and cover. I've shown up to cover them, but I'm not leading it. I didn't lead any of those rallies or events. I just showed up there, right? And they were able to get hundreds of thousands of people out in the street repeatedly, whether it's DC, New York, Boston, et cetera, Texas, even in Texas, like all over the place, right? So who led those rallies? That was PSL and Answer Coalition. So a lot of times they'll work together to get these events going, and they do bring out the numbers. I will say that they get the people out in the streets. So I always tell people, if you're looking to do some type of rally event and you want large numbers, it might be good to talk to them just because they have the infrastructure, they have the funding, they have buses that actually go to different cities to pick up people to take them to the rallies in DC. Like we're talking about, they have resources that I think a lot of us just don't have, right? So look at how successful those rallies have been. Look at how successful the pro-Palestinian movement has been. Again, it wasn't led by media people. I think the problem that you run into, although I agree, I thought Force the Vote was a good idea, but the problem that you run into when it's led by media is that because they have these platforms, this can be a win for them, but this can also be, a disaster for them. If it works out, great, it can help their platform. If it doesn't work out, it can hurt their platform. And then there's also different personalities that are involved. Now you got people with different personalities, different egos. There's going to be disagreements. People are going to butt heads, but I think you're going to see that in any activist organization where people are going to have disagreements. The civil rights movement had disagreements over slogans and where to protest and how to protest. That happened back then too. But I think the difference is, imagine if the civil rights movement was led by someone who hosted like a radio show or a news reporter or news commentator back then, right? Like you have something to really lose, or you have something to really gain because you have that platform. So I think it's great for those of us in media to actually elevate those activities. So we do this a lot, JB. We bring on people that are promoting a march or a rally or something like that, and different activists, like what's going on in the community. We do that often. So I think that's where our role is. And like, if we wanted to participate in those movements, we can do so, but I don't think that we should lead it because I feel like, again, there's a lot at stake for someone who is a media personality.
Yeah. I just want to give my thoughts on it. And I'm going to use one of my analogies. For those of us who are in independent media, I want you guys to listen to me very closely. Do you want to be a microphone or do you want to be a mouth? You have to be either one or the other. You can't be both. For those of us who are in independent media, if we truly want the ground, the people to actually move, it has to be the people who lead that movement first. People like myself, I'm here to amplify the voices of the people who are on the ground. I am not the voice that dictates what happens. I am the bullhorn, not the mouth. And this is something I think that needs to be brought to the attention of a lot of people who are in independent media. They try to say, oh, we're trying to lead a movement. No. You are needed to amplify the voices of the leaders of the movement. You are basically an independent version of the CBS, NBC, and ABC. That's all you are. You're just an independent version of it. All right? Let the people who are actually doing the work on the ground lead the movement, because therefore, it's just like what was said earlier. I don't know the particular issues that is needed in St. Paul or in Phoenix or in Flint. I don't know that. So therefore, I cannot dictate to what they do on the ground. Also, like a man, I cannot censor myself in these different areas. Like, with respect to you, Eric, white people cannot center themselves when it comes to Black and brown spaces. I'm a cis male. I cannot center myself within the spaces of people who are trans, right? I have to be mindful of my privilege of having this platform and use it to elevate instead of being that voice. That's